Hello, beautiful friends. I am Laurel Bleadon-Maffei with Illuminating Souls, welcoming you to this episode of Sleepy Bedtime Blessings, a podcast designed to help you rest, relax, and fall asleep, all while deepening in your connection with your angels and guides who love you so. So I invite you to take a deep breath in and out and allow yourself to breathe in the love of this moment. If we're meeting for the first time, hello. I am an angelic practitioner, a spiritual teacher, and an encourager of souls. And I do this through one-on-one angel sessions, soul mentoring, and a variety of classes. And you can learn more about the work that I do tomorrow when you wake up. You can head on over to illuminatingsouls.com and you'll hear all about it. But for now, I am here to help lull you to sleep. If you're new to the World of Sleep podcasts, I have been using them for years to help me transition from my waking consciousness to that beautiful, mysterious expanse of sleep. We're going to be together for about an hour, and there are many more episodes in the archive, so if you need more than an hour, there are more episodes to listen to. And I want to thank you for being here. It feels like a great blessing that we get to be together. And as of this recording, I will say that the audience for this podcast is small and intimate. So I almost feel like I can send you some extra special love across the waves here. And I feel like I should mention there may be a little bit of background noise here today, or tonight. As I record this, it's Tuesday and this episode is for Wednesday. And I've been waiting for whatever is happening in my neighborhood to stop. And it hasn't yet. So if you hear a little bit of extra noise, just let it go. I didn't want the ambient noise to keep me from getting to spend this time with you. I'm recording this in the afternoon. I usually record early in the mornings, but my mornings have been a little busy lately. The benefit of recording at this time, though, is I just finished facilitating a class that was wonderful, and my energy just feels bright and shiny. And so I'm going to share these vibrations with you. There is a really powerful concept called entrainment, that when we're around others who are vibrating at a certain altitude, we can make adjustments to meet them where they are. Quite often as empaths, this can work to our detriment. So if you've been around people who are upset or unhappy, it's not uncommon to feel as if maybe your energy has given in a little bit to wherever they are. But it also can work to our benefit. One of the most powerful things I came to realize on my spiritual journey was that when I entered into energy fields where the energy was high and was being facilitated in service to the upliftment, not only for myself but for others, it would be so much easier to feel brighter about whatever was going on in my life. For those of you who have been with me for a while, you know that I'm a graduate of the University of Santa Monica, where I studied spiritual psychology. And at the time I attended, they met in person. They had a building in Santa Monica, and we would meet once a month. It would be one weekend a month. And it was not uncommon for me to make an inventory of all the issues I was going to talk about over that weekend, right? Because I had stuff. I had so much stuff to process. Whether I had stuff to process about God or family or work or whatever it was, yes, we all have stuff. I had stuff. And I would just kind of add it to my list of, I'm going to be so happy to be able to process through this. And then I would drive to Santa Monica from my office in Hollywood, kind of again mentally going through my inventory of what I was going to process once I got there. And I would walk into the building, and it's like my stuff would evaporate. My stuff could not exist within the energy field that was USM some days. I was like, stuff, what stuff? Oh my God, life is good. God is here. Everything is awesome. Have you met me? I'm happy. And I always found that fascinating. I would be able to, resurrect my stuff when I needed to for healing, but it was so interesting to me how just entering an energy field of a building could shift how I was experiencing my inner life. And the same thing would happen to me often when I went to Agape Spiritual Center in Los Angeles. And so my hope is this podcast can help create that kind of space for you. That when you tune in, you'll know you're entering a beautiful sacred container that is co-created by the angels who love you so. And the energy here is high, and the vibration is filled with light. So that when you listen, maybe you'll feel as if the heavier experiences of life, the sharp edges of them can melt away a bit. And I mention this because in this moment I am feeling such brightness of light and gratitude coming through. I just spent an hour and a half in the company of some beautiful people and in the company of angels. And so I am definitely feeling plugged in, and I generously, with gratitude in my heart, share this love with you right now. That the angels are here to uplift your energy field. Because when we have greater altitude, it becomes easier to process and move through those things that might feel otherwise immovable in our lives. So take a deep breath in and let yourself receive these beautiful frequencies of light that the angels are bringing forward for you now. And I'm going to call in the angels, even though they're already here. because there's something so powerful about acknowledging and opening to the wellspring of divine light. So, beautiful angels on high, we invite you to join us here, and we are grateful for the opportunity to come together in the loving presence of God and the angels. Angels, I ask that you bring forth prayers of healing, of light, of goodness. I ask that you bring forth calming and soothing frequencies that help each of the beloveds here come into a deep, restful space, helping to clear out anything that is not theirs, that no longer serves them, and help each one of our beloveds to connect with a lightness of spirit that better reflects their authentic essence. So, dear ones, just take a deep breath in and release, and give your body permission to rest, to feel a wave of relaxation that starts at the tip of your toes and moves gently up your body, allowing yourself to go deeper into a state of rest. You are precious in this world. You are a gift from on high. And we are so deeply grateful for the opportunity to be here with you. So just imagine or visualize allowing it to be so, that the angels are bringing to you brighter, lighter energy. And that as your light body receives it, it informs the rest of your beingness. So it makes it easier for you to come into positive shifts of consciousness. Just like our favorite house plants, if you have a plant and you turn it, that you come back a day or so later and the leaves have somehow pivoted to the light source. And if this is true of a plant, why would it not be true of us too, of you too? So just pivot towards the light energetically. Give yourself permission to come into the fullness and the wholeness of you. Josephus, the guides I channel, love to call it the greater expanse of all that you are. They say the word soul is too small. But when they speak of the greater expanse of all that you are, they reference the timeless, wise being that is you, filled with the breath and the light of God, filled with so many blessings, giving yourself permission to connect with the innate wholeness, with the magnificence of your true spirit, allowing yourself to connect with the authentic gifts and abilities that dwell within you, Taking a deep breath in, feeling the brightness of all that you are. And the angels will support you as you sleep and helping you deepen in your connection with the magnificence of your true spirit, helping you remember all that you are in a way that will delight you. There is so much wonderment about you. You have a soul that shines brightly. You are a source of goodness and loving on this planet. You have kindness within you. Do you know how valuable kindness is? You are a source of kindness in this world. What a gift you are. You are an adventurer of consciousness, right? You love to learn and explore and deepen in your own healing and understanding. And in doing so, you are helping to evolve consciousness. What a blessing you are. So you take a deep breath in and out and snuggle on into your bed because it is time to rest. And your body is already relaxing and your consciousness is starting to drift off and wander into that great mystery of sleep. I always find it so fascinating to fall asleep as I feel my consciousness starting to disengage. And then all of a sudden I'm gone somewhere. Somewhere my consciousness is experiencing the astral realm. And that's why sometimes when we wake up, we feel more refreshed, or we have a different perspective. Something has been lifted. So I affirm for you, if I may have permission to affirm on your behalf, that when you awaken, whenever that is, that the angels will have helped you experience a positive shift, a shift of perspective. Maybe some new molecules of inspiration will have found you. Maybe something will feel lighter to you than it did the day before. But that we are opening a treasure chest of miracles and positive possibilities for you. That the angels and I are holding for you. We're holding for joy for you. We are holding for well-being for you. We are holding for brighter tomorrows. So allow the angels to comfort you and will help lull you to sleep. And just breathe. And feel the love pour over you. We are so deeply grateful for the gift of you. You are a miracle from on high. And while you rest, the angels will watch over you. And I'm going to tell you a story. So tonight's story is a walk down memory lane. I really enjoy getting to share different snippets of life with you, and my hope is they keep you amused and a little bored at the same time so you can drift off. And as I'm recording this is a few days before the start of Passover. And I grew up Jewish, and Passover was a big deal growing up. And I have so many wonderful memories associated with Passover that I thought this could be our Passover episode. So you don't ever have to have attended a Seder to appreciate this episode. So here we go. This is waxing poetic about Passover, and I will share some recipes with you from one of my community cookbooks. But let's start off with Passover. What is Passover? I'm pretty sure you know what Passover is, but in case you don't know, and because I've got about 40 minutes to fill here, Passover is the story of when the Jews were enslaved in Egypt, and God came forward and asked Moses to help free the slaves, which he did. And Passover is 8 days that represent the whole journey of the Jews' exodus from Egypt. And if you've ever seen the movie 10 Commandments by Cecil B. DeMille with Charlton Heston and Yul Brynner, it's the story of Passover. This is not, I hope you can appreciate, this is not a religious teaching here, right? I have no business teaching the religious version of Passover, just so you know. This is my perspective of Passover as a Jewish girl who grew up in Skokie. And this is not meant to be a theological teaching. This is more, my Earth Girls memories about Passover. So, in the Jewish religion, the first 2 nights of Passover, you have a Seder, which you would have a prayer book called the Haggadah, and you would read the story of Passover, and you would eat foods that were symbolic of the holiday, and drink wine, and you would pray and sing songs, and eventually you got to eat a meal, which was always the highlight of Passover in our family. And so I'm going to kind of walk you through what we would experience about Passover. The other thing that was key to Passover was that you could not have any bread or leavened products. So you couldn't have bread or pasta or rice. You could have matzah, which I don't know if you've ever had matzah, but it's not the best thing. It's this flat, crumbly, giant cracker thing without much flavor. But we'll get to matzah in a second. But first, I will share with you what Passover was like in my family. So there were 2 Seders, right? First night and second night that our family would get together. And our family consisted of my siblings and my parents, usually my mom's sister and her husband and their sons. And if the Seder was at our house, it also included my aunt and uncle. My aunt was my father's sister. So as a child, it was really cool because every year we would have these consistent gatherings, and it really allowed us to build a very strong foundation as a family. So preparing for Passover was always a big deal. We couldn't bring any bread into the house, or the bread would go down in the freezer, and people who were more religious really clean out their homes of any bread products. We didn't go that far. So the contraband bread and things would go down into the basement, but we didn't have to scrub out our house or anything like that. But some people do that. And you would set out a big Seder plate. The Seder plate had different symbols for the service. I'm not going to go into what all of them are. Again, I'm not trying to teach you about Passover. I'm more just sharing about my experiences. And we would have our own little Seder plates in front of us. For me, one of the highlights of the Seder plate was the harosis. And harosis is apples chopped up. If you were a kid, grape juice. If you were an adult, wine and nuts and cinnamon. And you would mix that up really good. And it was supposed to represent the mortar that the enslaved Jews used to help build things for the Egyptians. So harosis was awesome. That was an awesome part of Passover. And also on the plate would be a little piece of matzah. There would be maror, which is horseradish. You'd have a little piece of horseradish. And you would have a piece of parsley. And I know I'm leaving something out. But all of these things you would wind up eating during the service. Whenever the prayer would come up, and we would talk about the maror, which was the bitterness, right? It would symbolize the bitterness of the slavery of the Jews, and then you would make a Hillel sandwich, which was matzah and harosis and maror. And as a kid, you're going through this whole prayer book and this whole service. And children, even back then, we didn't have a very good attention span. So the service to me always felt really long. And in our family, we would always count on the Haggadah, like at what page do we get dinner? Dinner is served. That was always the best part. Listen, and I will just say, I will apologize in advance if you're Jewish and you feel like I'm doing a terrible job of explaining about Passover. You're right. I'm really just sharing some of my memories, okay? So other people will be much better at telling you about Passover than I will be. I'm just sharing here. Just sharing a little bit, some storytelling about Passover. The other thing about Passover is that there are 4 glasses of wine that get imbibed during the service. So as a kid, we would get grape juice, which I liked grape juice. So that was okay. And I don't want you to be thinking this was really good wine. Like if you are a wine aficionado, I don't want you to think, oh, that sounds amazing. This was Manischewitz wine, which typically is profoundly sweet. And for many Jewish children, their first experience of tasting wine is at a Seder. And I will say one of my first wine experiences, I don't know how old I wasn't terribly young, was Manischewitz blackberry wine. If you know, you know. It's so sweet. It basically is like grape jelly is wine, basically. That's sweet. And so we would go through the service, and, the service is the same, although people would have different Haggadahs. We had the Maxwell House Coffee Haggadah. Again, if you know, you know. And there's songs that you sing. And the interesting thing is people are drinking more and more wine as the services get on, so people get a little more uninhibited. And so we would sing songs a little louder as the service went on. Now, I have to just tell you about the super cool part of the Seder if you're a kid. So, early on in the Seder, there is a stack of matzah. Again, matzah, think of a big flat cracker that's pretty big. And there's a stack of matzah. And the adult leading the service takes the middle matzah out, breaks it, and puts it in a napkin. And this becomes what is called the afikomen. Now, As a kid, the afikomen is gold because at some point in the first half of the service, the adults will hide the afikomen, and after dinner, the children have to look for the afikomen, and the child who finds it gets a cool prize. I mean, imagine you're 5 or 6 years old. Is there anything better than that? So again, with the attention span of a child, from the moment the afikomen is put in play, every year we would promise ourselves we would not take our eye off the afikomen, right? Because we wanted to find it, because you wanted the prize. Who was not competitive as a kid? And every year we would get distracted. Like by the first round of Dayenu, which is a song we sing, who knew where the afikomen was anymore? And our cousins were older than us by about 10 years, and so they would always, hide it somewhere. And so when it was time to look for the afikomen, we would play the game of hot and cold, right? So if you're getting closer to the afikomen, you're getting hot, you're getting hot, you're getting warmer. Or you're cold, you're freezing cold if you're going in the wrong direction. And chaos would ensue, and eventually one of us would find the afikomen. And then we would get a cool prize. I seem to recall in our families, they often involved the Kennedy $50, which was a thing then. And 50 cents back then was a lot of money as a kid. Or we got a toy of some kind. And just so you know, in our family, I don't know how it was in anybody else's, in our family, every kid got a prize, just so you know. You totally would get the bragging rights for having been the one who found the afikomen, but everyone would get a prize, which I guess is a lovely thing about my family. Like, you got a prize just for showing up. Here, have a Kennedy $50. So that was the afikomen. The other highlight of the service as a kid was, again, in the first part of the service, there is a prayer or a song, a part of the service called the Manish Tana. And the Manish Tana stands for the 4 questions. There are 4 questions that the youngest child of the family is supposed to ask of the person who's leading the service. That's what it's supposed to be. Now, for a long time, my sister and I were the youngest. And, being the little gregarious, outgoing little girl that I was, I wanted to learn the Manish Tana, which I did. And so the first year I got to sing the Manish Tana was a big deal. I couldn't even focus on the rest of the service because I was waiting for my part. Do you remember being that young? For whatever reason, whether it was a role in the kindergarten play, that everything was unimportant because you had to wait for your part. So I would wait for my part. And then I would sing the Manish Tana, and my mother would look so proud. My mother loved it when my sister and I sang. She'd be like, "You girls have such beautiful voices." And then everyone, of course, because it being my family, was like, "That was beautiful, Laurel. You have such a beautiful voice." And little, however old I was, 7 or 8-year-old me, I felt so important and so seen in the talents that I embodied with my Manish Tana singing. Now here's what I could not know. Probably a year or 2 later, my sister did the Manish Tana, but she at the beginning, tended to be a little shyer than I was. So I still would sing it. She sang it too, but it was usually easier to wind me up. And then she did find her way, and she would take it over. But what we couldn't see happening was, first, it would be many years before any new children would come into our family. So my sister and I were the required Manish Tana singers well into our older years. And even once my cousins were born and came of age, they didn't want to do it. So I remember having to sing the Manish Tana way into my 20s, probably even into my 30s. So little did I know, when I found my spotlight when I was 7 or 8 with the Manish Tana, it would become a lifelong commitment. I just share that with you in case any of you were the Manish Tana people in your family. But my sister and I did the Manish Tana proud for many, many years. So clearly what I'm sharing with you are not the things of religious significance, but the things that were very important to me as a child. The other thing, so anyways, going back to the Seder, I loved the Seders because we got to be with our family. There was the Afikomen, there was the Harosis, there was the Manish Tana, there was, and dinner is served, and we got to have really good food, and I loved Passover. Now here was the part of Passover that wasn't so cool. So for 8 days, you give up bread. Now, nowadays, food scientists have made a lot of leaps, and there are a lot of Hasidic options. Hasidic is what we would say for something that was kosher for Passover. We used to say Hasidiki. I don't know that it's really supposed to be Hasidiki, but that's what we used to say. So when I grew up, you basically had matzah, and you could cook stuff with matzah meal. So my mom would make a kosher for Passover kind of angel food cake that did not involve flour. So there were a few things you could have, and you would have macaroons, not to be confused with macarons. See, macarons are those super delicious little French cookie sandwiches made with almond flour that cost like $5 a piece. A macaroon, at least when I grew up, was this coconut cookie, super sweet. Again, when I grew up, they came in a can. You opened the can, and there were a bunch of these sweet haystack cookies of coconut. There were chocolate and vanilla, and I think at some point there might have been almond flavored. But that was kind of it. Oh, and these super gross jelly fruit slice things. You know, as a kid, I don't know how you were, but pretty much if it was candy, I would eat it. But this was one of the candies I didn't even want to eat. But I would eat it because it was the only one we could have that was kosher for Passover. They were these like half jelly slices. They were really awful. But they were the candy we could have, so I also associate Passover with those weird jelly slice things. Nowadays, you can get a lot more that's kosher for Passover, so if you're going through Whole Foods or something and you see all these foods, and you go, what is Laurel talking about? There's so many options. Well, these options were not available to little Laurel in the 60s and 70s. So we would go to school, because Passover was not so big a holiday that you couldn't go to school. And we would open our lunch boxes. This is my memory. There would be this very sad piece of matzah, because no one really wanted matzah. Typically, you'd have a hard-boiled egg, because a part of the Passover service, the Seder, typically we ate hard-boiled eggs. So there were always leftover hard-boiled eggs. So you would get a hard-boiled egg, maybe a piece of fruit, and a piece of matzah. Maybe the matzah would have peanut butter and jelly on it. If we were lucky, if you remember the last episode, episode 41, I mentioned matzah kugel, but in our house, there was never leftover matzah kugel beyond the first day, because we ate it. See, it would have been awesome if my lunch included a piece of matzah kugel. that I could get with. But I just remember a very sad piece of matzah, a hard-boiled egg, maybe a piece of fruit, and maybe a macaroon or two. And lunches were a sad, sad affair during Passover. That's what I remember. My sad little lunchbox. And, it's really sweet. When I married Wes, without going into too much of the story, Wes didn't really grow up with Passover. He's technically Jewish, but didn't really grow up around a lot of Jewish customs and cultures. And I learned about my husband that he likes matzah. Like most people just don't want to eat matzah because it's a Tuesday. You eat matzah because it's Passover. And my mother loved my husband, loved him. Wes hung the moon as far as she's concerned, which of course he did. But he would sit and eat matzah with my mom. And I was like, Mom, no wonder you love him. This is why I love him too. So just a sweet matzah story with Wes and my mom sharing matzah together when it was not Passover. I was like, he's a good man. He's eating matzah with my mom. And I was feeling nostalgic and just recently bought a box of matzah. Not so much for Passover because I don't keep kosher in that way anymore. But I think I was thinking of my mom. And so just the other day I had peanut butter and jelly on a piece of matzah, which has so many memories, and I took a picture and I sent it to my sister. I said, this made me think of Mom. So, again, I just love how all of these memories are linked together. So, as an adult, I don't find the whole Seder experience nearly as enchanting as I did when I was a child. But certainly as a child, Passover was one of those holidays I really enjoyed. And I thought I would read to you some Passover recipes because I love sharing food memories with you. So we're going to go into some of my Jewish community kitchen cookbooks and see what kind of recipes I can come up with for you. Okay, this is from a cookbook called From Dora with Love, and it's favorite recipes compiled for and by the Sisterhood of the Garden City Jewish Center in Garden City, Long Island, New York. And it looks like it was published somewhere between 1967 and 1968. And they have a whole section of Passover recipes. So let's start with their recipe for harosis. 2 apples, half a cup of chopped walnuts, 1 teaspoon of cinnamon, 1 teaspoon of sugar, and 2 tablespoons of red wine. Grate the apples with the skins on. Mix with the rest of the ingredients. Add wine and mix thoroughly. Now, I should say this recipe is kind of small. In our family, we used a lot of apples, and we chopped them. And there also typically was a lot of wine, and we loved eating harosis, so we always made a lot, so there would be lots of leftovers. And I will say harosis on matzah is a really good thing. Of course, you can make matzah balls. Yes, I think everyone has heard of matzah ball soup made with matzah meal. But I'm not going to give you a matzah ball recipe because those are easy to find. We're going to look for something a little more eclectic. I will share with you something awesome called matzah brie, which is kind of scrambled eggs with matzah. It's like a matzah pancake. Think of matzah French toast, if you will. So they call this fried matzah, but we would have called it matzah brie. And it's 3 sheets of matzah, 3 eggs, 1/8 of a pound of margarine, and a pinch of salt. So you soak the matzah in hot water, drain thoroughly through the colander, beat 3 eggs with the salt, Mix in bowl thoroughly. Heat the 1/8 of a pound of margarine until golden brown. Put in the mixture. Cook on medium light until brown. Turn and cook on the other side until brown. And this is from Ina Robinson. So matzah brie was a big thing growing up with Passover. This is matzah apple pudding by Dora Gaba. 3 whole matzah, 3 tart apples grated, 1/2 cup of sugar, 1/4 teaspoon of salt, 1 teaspoon of cinnamon, and 2 eggs well beaten. Break the matzah and soak in cold water until soft. Drain and add grated apples and sugar, salt, cinnamon, and eggs. Mix well and pour into a greased pudding pan. Bake in slow oven at 325 degrees for about 45 minutes. Serve hot. You know, we were talking about kugel in the last episode, and this is a potato kugel for Passover. Again from Dora Gaba. 6 potatoes peeled, 3 eggs, 1/2 cup of matzah meal, 1/2 teaspoon of potato starch, 1½ teaspoons of salt, pepper to taste, 1 grated onion, which is optional. So preheat the oven to 350 degrees. Grate potatoes into cold water, then drain. There should be 3 cups. Beat the eggs until they are thick. Stir in the potatoes and remaining ingredients. Turn the batter into a 1½ quart casserole and bake uncovered about 1 hour. It yields 6 to 8 servings. And here is a sweet matzah apple kugel, which is probably more in keeping with what my mom made, but I don't remember her using apples. But this has 4 matzah, 4 eggs, 1/2 cup of brown sugar, 3 apples sliced, 1 cup of white raisins, 1/4 pound of butter, a teaspoon of salt, a teaspoon of cinnamon, and 1/2 teaspoon of ground cloves. Soak matzah until soft. Drain and squeeze out all water. Separate eggs. Combine yolks with the rest of the ingredients. Beat the egg whites stiff and fold into mixture, leaving a little white for the top. Put in greased pan, dot with butter, and bake in a 200-degree oven for 1½ hours. Okay, and then I have to, I can't do this without sharing with you a sponge cake recipe, because in our house, a sponge cake became a staple for us for Passover. This is a sponge cake with 12 eggs. So, 12 eggs separated. 1½ cups of sugar. The rind of 1 grated lemon. 1/2 cup of orange juice. 1 cup of cake meal. And 1/2 cup of potato starch. Sift the cake meal and potato starch together. Beat egg yolks with sugar until light colored and thick. Add grated lemon rind and orange juice. Add sifted dry ingredients and stir without beating until well blended. Beat the egg whites until stiff but not too dry. Fold into the mixture. Pour into a greased and waxed paper lined 12 by 14 by 3-inch oblong pan, or into 3 8-inch layer cake pans or square pans. Bake for about an hour or until done in moderate 350-degree oven. Invert pans on a cake rack until cool and remove the paper. And I remember we always knew Passover was approaching because my mom would get out the stand mixer and start making the sponge cake. A lot of times she would put them in the freezer until we were ready for them. But it was always a production. She always would make her sponge cakes for us. So thanks, Mom, for going to the extra work. And I will say, in this recipe book, there are a lot of sponge cake recipes, so there are lots of different versions of the sponge cake. I'm sure my sister must have my mom's recipe somewhere. And here's a recipe for Passover almond cookies that sound pretty good. 1/2 cup of matzo meal, 1/2 cup of potato starch, 2 eggs, 2 tablespoons of melted shortening, 1/2 cup of sugar, 1/4 cup of chopped almonds. Sift matzo meal and potato starch together. Add beaten eggs, melted shortening, sugar, and chopped almonds. Roll the dough out into a mixture of potato starch and sugar. Cut to size desired and bake in a greased cookie sheet in a hot 400-degree oven for 30 minutes. There's also a recipe here for pancakes, and I seem to remember that we also would have matzo meal pancakes that my mom would make. And can I just say, God bless my mom. I would imagine this must have been much harder on the moms of this era to create food for their family that was kosher for Passover. So these are cheese and banana pancakes. So these were not the pancakes I would have had as a child, but they sound good. They would have done the trick. So it's 1 cup of milk or water, 1 cup of matzo meal, 1 mashed banana, 1 cup of cottage cheese, 1/2 teaspoon of salt, 1 teaspoon of cinnamon, and 2 eggs. Pour water over matzo meal and let stand 10 minutes. Add banana, cheese, salt, and cinnamon. Add eggs 1 at a time and mix well. Drop batter with teaspoon onto greased frying pan. Allow room for pancakes to spread. Fry slowly on both sides and serve with sugar or honey or jam. Delicious when served with sour cream. And this is Mabel's Passover Nut Cake, Hungarian style, by Mabel Berman. 9 eggs, 1½ cups of sugar, the juice and rind of 1/2 lemon, the juice and rind of 1/2 orange, 1½ cups of finely ground walnuts, and 1¼ cup of cake meal. They would mean matzo meal here. Beat the egg white stiff and add sugar gradually. Beat yolks until light and creamy. Add juices and rind and add to the whites by folding in carefully. Fold in the walnuts by hand, a little at a time, and lastly the cake meal. Grease a 9-inch angel cake pan with margarine and dust with cake meal. Pour the mixture and bake for 1 hour at 350 degrees. Invert the pan when done and let cool. And finally, I will share with you something that I wish I had as a kid, because these sound great. Passover brownies. I'm sure my mother must have tried something like brownies, but they just were never as good as non-Passover brownies. But here we go. 1/2 cup of cocoa, 1/2 cup of cake meal, 1/2 cup of shortening, 1 cup of sugar, 3 eggs, 1 tablespoon of orange juice, 1 cup of chopped walnuts. Sift together cocoa and cake meal. Cream together sugar and shortening. Add eggs 1 at a time. Add orange juice and dry ingredients. Add walnuts. Bake in a square pan in 350-degree oven for 20 to 25 minutes. And I said that was going to be the last recipe, but then I looked, and on the next page is a recipe for a Passover bagel. I can't believe there would ever be such a thing. Oh, probably now they could do it, but here, back in 1968, is a recipe for a Passover bagel. 3/4 of a cup of oil, 1.5 cups of water, 2.5 cups of matzah meal, 4 tablespoons of sugar, 1/4 teaspoon of salt, and 6 eggs separated. Boil together the water and oil. Add the matzah meal, sugar, and salt and mix well. Add the beaten egg yolks and then the beaten egg whites. Mix well and roll into balls. Place in a well-greased pan and make a hole in the center. Bake 1 hour in a 400-degree oven until golden brown. You know, nowadays we are so used to foods becoming other foods, right? Cauliflower, pizza crust, cauliflower gnocchi, flourless chocolate cakes. You know, nowadays for Passover there are so many delicious options. But I will say back in the day when I grew up, we had a limited repertoire. And I don't know, I actually kind of love those memories of, you know, the foods that we had and our rituals at the time. I don't know, to me there was something magical about Passover. And I think that when you get to grow up with rituals that create a sense of family and love and consistency, and when you get to share those memories with other people you love, it sets up a gorgeous tapestry for life. You know, to this day, even though we don't do seders, if I get to talk with my cousins or my family about Passover, it just makes me happy. You know, there's a shared experience and conversation. And I hope that this connects you with whatever your tapestry of love is. I'm deeply grateful that we had this time together. And thank you for allowing me to share a bit of my heart with you. If you're not asleep yet, you can queue up another episode and the angels and I will continue to keep you company. But for now, dear ones, I send you love. I wish you a good rest, and we'll talk again soon. Thank you.